Chapter 15 Keepers of the Feather. Henry could not deny it. The first card's prediction had come true. But that did not mean he was destined to overthrow Strahd. He wondered how many other people Madame Eva had duped with her prophecies. Hadn't there been many heroes who had come to Barovia and failed to bring down the vampire? Irina sat behind him on Snowflake. She had said nothing since hearing the passage from Strahd's diary. Though he never said his name in the passage, they all knew it was his diary. They rode west, over a bridge and through the forest. Leaves that should have displayed autumn's full colors showed only brown and gray on the gnarled trees. The melody of Elvir's lute was muffled by the fog, sounding far off and otherworldly in the stillness. The minstrel played while Milivoj drove the cart. Henry and Irina followed behind, with Navara and Rowan taking up the rear. "How are you doing?" Henry asked Irina. She exhaled a short breath. "I was right about Strahd. He thinks I look like Tatiana." "But you're not her." "I know, but he treats me like I am." "We're not going to let him harm you. Once we get to Kresik, you'll be safe." Irina tightened her hand around his arm. "I was thinking about the next card in Madame Eva's reading, the one that talked about a sword of sunlight. It might be the same one Strahd mentioned in his book. The card said the weapon was hidden in the house of a saint. Could that be the Abbey of St. Markovia?" "I don't think so," Henry said. "How could that sword still be around if Strahd said he had it destroyed?" "You think our next item is the magic sword?" Rowan asked, reining Juniper to walk abreast with Snowflake. "That makes sense. The card also said it was hidden behind the sun. What could that mean?" "If there is a sword," Henry said, "and if it's at the Abbey, hidden somewhere, it might only present itself when the sun is in the right position, the right hour, or something like that." "Now you believe, Henry?" Rowan raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of ifs," he said. "Navara, did you hear this?" Rowan asked. "Henry's starting to see the light." Navara, sitting backwards on Juniper's rump, had her nose in the tome. "Guys, this is really hard to decipher. Strahd uses some kind of code. If only I can figure it out, I think I can read more." "Navara, has your patron told you anything important lately?" Irina asked. Henry could tell by the tone of her voice that Irina did not want to know more about Strahd. "That's right, Navara." Henry looked back at her. "You haven't said anything weird yet. Come on, out with it. What's the phrase of the day?" Navara bit her lip and did not look away from the tome. "It's stupid. I'm not going to say it." "Now you have to say it," Henry smirked. "Oh, fine." She turned around and faced forward. "I don't know why he thought of this, but Gostomir wanted me to say, 'Remember that guy Vasily? He really smelled like poop.' See? It's terrible." Irina snorted and tried to hold in a laugh. "Sorry, that's just... wow." "Navara," Henry said, "I'd say your patron is jealous." Navara let out a squeak. "Gostomir?" "Yeah, sounds like he likes you." Rowan leaned back on Navara. "No competition, if you ask me." Navara closed and opened the tome's clasp, then closed and opened it again. "Elvir," she called to him, "how much farther is the winery?" The bard stopped singing, but continued strumming. That man must have calluses of stone to play for this long, Henry thought. "We might have been able to arrive sooner," Elvir said. "But as it is, we'll reach the winery after nightfall. Not good to be out after dark, but at least the moon isn't full tonight. There's a den of werewolves somewhere in these woods."
"Werewolves?" Rowan said. "I know they transform and become savage at the full moon, but what about were-ravens?"
Elvir stopped playing. "Did bursting through the window with a flock of ravens give it away? You're not the first to figure out my family's secret, you know. Others have wondered why the Blue Water Inn closes its doors every night of the full moon."
"When I was a cat in the barn," Rowan said, "I saw you turn into a raven. At least I didn't accuse you of witchcraft."
"We are neither witches nor werewolves," said the bard. "The entire Martikov family was cursed with lycanthropy many years ago, but I say it was a gift to endure this oppressive valley. Unlike werewolves, were-ravens don't hunt. They dance in the light of the full moon. Our uncontrolled transformation is one of celebration. It's as though we become drunk on happiness and can't stop from laughing. Sometimes I long for the nights when the moon is at its brightest, when everything seems carefree and beautiful. But it's an illusion. Morning comes and we go back to the cold reality of Barovia. We realize what fools we'd been for thinking we could go on being happy." He began to strum another tune. The song was different from the others he'd played, still bearing marks of sadness, but this time with a silver lining in the otherwise lonely melody. The mists thinned enough to permit the lute's full timbre. "What about you, Henry?" Elvir asked. "I'm not the only one with secrets that have come to light. People say you're the white angel that was foretold. They say you've come to free the valley. You've been meting out justice against the wicked, healing children with the touch of your hand, and even before that, Yeska was spreading the news of your wings all over town."
"I've heard about the White Angel too," Irina said. Then she rested her head on Henry's back and whispered to him, "I don't know if you're the angel of prophecy come to save Barovia, but you've been a saving angel to me."
Henry said nothing, letting Irina put her arms around him, and for once he didn't mind being someone's hero. Elvir's fingers danced across the lute strings as he lifted his voice. He sang about the White Angel. He sang about hope. After traveling many miles, Elvir stopped them. It was well past nightfall, and the wood was dark. "This is the lane to the winery, but something's wrong." He dismounted. Strewn about the road were things that looked like fallen branches and bits of driftwood. A closer look revealed, however, they were small figures, with arms and legs like vines. Heads with twisted roots sprouted like hair. "Blights," Elvir said, drawing his sword. They all dismounted. Rowan lifted her staff, and the tip shed a dim glow. Something rustled in the bushes beside Henry, and he unsheathed his sword. Irina did the same. Henry wanted to ask someone what a blight was, other than a plant disease, but he kept his mouth shut and his eyes on his surroundings.
"What's going on?" Milivaj asked.
Henry put a finger to his lips, then realized the boy was only human and could not see in the darkness. Irina probably could not see well either. It was somewhat hard for Henry, too, but he had keen eyesight like the elves. Though the leaves were scant on the trees, there was little light from the half-moon above to soften the unnatural gloom. "Just don't move and be quiet," Henry told the boy in a hushed tone. He took a step closer to the rustling underbrush, then pushed back a branch with his shield. "Stay back!" A man held out an axe, the iron blade just inches from Henry's neck. Behind the man were 4 children. One of them, a teenage boy, cradled a baby that began to cry. "Adrian?" Elvir pushed past Henry into the grove beyond the underbrush. "Elvir?" the man with the axe asked. "It's me," the bard said. "What's happened here?" Elvir, thank the Morning Lord you've come. It's the Druids. They've been attacking us for the past 10 days, sending out blights to assault the winery. The man kept his stance, his eyes fixed on Henry. It's all right, brother, said Elvir. This is Henry. He's here to help. Henry extended a hand to the older man. Adrian finally lowered his axe, then shook Henry's hand with his left. Only then did Henry notice that the man's right arm was missing. Since Elvir didn't seem concerned, Henry guessed it was an old wound, one he could not heal. "You've come just in time, Uncle Elvir," said the boy holding the crying babe. "Grandpa's with Mum and Dad. They're in the house, fighting the blights."
"Damn those Druids," Elvir said. "Why are they attacking this time?"
"They're bent on destroying us," Adrian said. "And Elvir, they've taken the last one." In the dark of the night, Henry saw Elvir's face go white. "We need to go now. Henry?" "I'm right behind you, Elvir," Henry said. He backed out from the bush and turned to the others on the road. "Listen, there's trouble up ahead. We'll go on foot with Elvir. Adrian?" He looked to the one-armed man. "We have children too. Can we leave them here with you? Milivaj the eldest can help if trouble comes." Adrian consented, and Henry and the other 4 crept up the lane, stepping over several more of the dead twig-like creatures. The forest opened to a sprawling vineyard. Rows of grapevines followed the lane to a 2-story building swathed in ivy. 2 stands of leaf-bare oaks compassed the east and west sides of the winery.
"Rowan?"
Navara tried to whisper.
"What are blights?"
"Corrupted plants," the druid said.
"If there are blights here, there's bound to be a Gulthias tree nearby."
Navara moaned.
"Oh no, not that."
"Wonderful," Henry said, trying to stay calm. "I might die from something called a gullias tree. Sounds like a shitty way to go." A loud crash came from within the building. Elvir picked up his pace and ran to the front door. Henry was right there with him. They charged in, swords out, to see a high-ceilinged rectangular room littered with dead blights. 4 enormous wooden vats occupied the center, interrupted in the middle by a staircase that rose to a balcony. Standing on the balcony were 3 ravens, tall as full-grown humans, wearing tunics and cloaks, wielding axes in their claw-like hands. Upon seeing the newcomers, one of the large ravens transformed into a snowy-bearded man. "Father," Elvir said. The bearded man pulled out a cane and walked slowly down the wooden steps. His green patchwork cloak jingled with bits of shiny metal as it trailed behind him. The other 2 ravens flew past the old man and turned into humans right as they landed in front of Elvir. "Brother," said a woman with wavy black hair. She put her axe down and hugged the minstrel. "We did it. We killed most of them and scared off the others." "Praise God you're all right. You too, Dag," Elvir said to the brown-haired man standing beside the woman. "I saw your kids outside. They're all getting big." "Are the children?" the woman asked with fear. "They're safe, Stefania." She sighed. "This isn't over," the old man said. His voice had a rich quality, low and throaty. He stopped a few feet away from them and leaned on his cane. "An entire year's harvest ruined." Henry put away his sword. "Sir, my name is Henry Gibson, and behind me are Irina, Rowan, and Navara. We've traveled here with your son to help you." The old man shook his head. "I fear I am beyond help now. Not unless you can fight all the wild men of the mountains and their witchcraft." "Father," Elvir said, "Adrian told me they took the last one, but that can't be." "It is," the old man said gravely. "They've taken it along with everything else. The vats are poisoned. The money is gone. There's nothing left now. I am broken.
utterly broken.
Rowan came forward, bowing her head.
"Are all these vats here poisoned?"
she asked, pointing to the giant oaken casks.
"Every last one."
The old man looked like he was about to collapse, were it not for his cane. Rowan walked over to the first vat, touched the oaken staves, and spoke an incantation. Her staff quivered. Henry saw the vibration go down her arm and into the barrel. Next, she took a cup from her satchel and held it under the spigot. She turned the knob, and red liquid flowed into the cup.
"Didn't you hear us?"
Stephania said.
"The wine is poisoned. I saw them tainting the vats with hemlock."
Rowan ignored her and took a sip.
"It's good wine," she said. "What did you do?"
Stephania asked, then gave a cry when Elvir went up to Rowan and also took a sip. "She's purified it," Elvir said. Stephania shook her head.
"Some poisons are tasteless and don't kill you right away."
"Don't worry, sis. I trust Rowan with my life." Elvir handed Stephania the cup. His sister took it and sniffed. The old man stepped toward Rowan. His squinting eyes, flanked by crow's feet, studied her like she was a puzzle.
"You used witchcraft. You're a druid."
Stephania dropped the cup as though it had pricked her, spilling the rest of its contents.
"But you're also an elf," the man continued. "I haven't seen a female elf in Barovia since I was a young boy."
"Rowan," said Elvir, "meet my father, Davian Martikov. He thanks you for saving his wine from the bottom of his heart." "Yes, father, Rowan is a druid, and as I said, I trust her with my life." Davian took the cup from the floor, filled it with fresh wine, and sipped. After smacking his lips and wiping his white whiskers with his hand, he said,
"We all have a lot of catching up to do."
It was deep into the night by the time the children had all been accommodated, the little ones tucked into beds, except for the baby who now slept in Stephania's arms. They sat around a long table in the dining room on the second floor. Although separate bedrooms flanked it on both sides, the dining room was more like a loft, doorless and open to the balcony that lined the winery's interior on all sides. A glass of wine sat in front of each of them, and everyone looked to Davian at the head of the table.
"So you got rid of Baron Volokhovich at last,"
Davian said, after listening to their tales. It was comical seeing the old man with his patched cloak and scruffy beard swirling the liquid in his glass like a sophisticated noble. "Vasily von Holtz is the burgomaster now," Henry said. He took a sip of wine. It had an oaky flavor, along with something sweet and floral. He was not particularly fond of red wines, but this was delicious. "My father hasn't been to Vallaki in many years," Elvir remarked. "But Stephania, Dag, and the kids come to visit the Blue Water Inn, and sometimes Adrian comes too."
"How are Erwin and Danica?" Stephania asked. "Their boys were so little the last time I saw them."
Stephania, Henry found out, after being properly introduced, was Davian's only daughter, married to Dag Temescu. Elvir was the youngest son, and Adrian the oldest. Erwin must be in the middle. "They miss you," Elvir said, "but they haven't been doing well ever since that wine shipment never came." Davian set down his glass and addressed the newcomers.
"Now that you've told me your story, I think it's time I tell you mine. You already know about our family's curse, but it goes deeper than that. We call ourselves Keepers of the Feather. We secretly oppose Strahd and his minions. Flocks of ravens throughout the valley act as our eyes and ears. I imagine the Count knows about us, but thinks we're too insignificant to pose a threat at the moment. He's that self-assured. Recently his druids took all we had left to keep the winery going. Even with this last batch purified, we can't hope to make any more, not with those blights destroying the land."
"Excuse me," Navara said, standing up. "There's something I must say."
She pushed her chair aside and knelt before the old man.
"Mr. Martikov, we have been searching for you."
Henry cocked an eyebrow.
"You are the leader of the Feathered Ones," she said, "hidden among the vines. Grapevines, it seems. And I know you must have some fight left in you. Will you help us free Barovia? It would be an honor to have you by our side."
Rowan choked on her wine. Irina patted the druid's back until she stopped coughing.
"My lady," Davian said, "I admire your bravery, but it only proves you're a stranger to Barovia. Only outsiders are brash enough to oppose Strahd openly. My family has opposed him from the shadows for generations, but not without sacrifice. We have helped bold knights and powerful mages in the past, but they all fail, leaving my family to suffer the consequences. I have lost brothers and sisters in the fight against Strahd, aunts and uncles, a daughter-in-law and grandchildren, and even my own mother. To you the horrors of the valley are new and shocking. You see an injustice and try to correct it, without thinking about the consequences. But for my family, suffering is the reality of our struggle."
His eyes turned to the sleeping child in Stefania's arms.
"What do you have at stake?"
Navara's confident demeanor changed. Her shoulders dropped, and her eyes turned up in dismay.
He makes a good point, Henry thought. I wouldn't want to help us if I were in his shoes. "Mr. Martikov," Navara said, this time with sympathy moderating her bold tone, "I can't imagine what you've suffered. But I'm willing to listen. I want to understand, and I want to help. All of us here do. We're not just passing through to stir up trouble for the valley. We are destined to save it."
Her eyes fixed on the old man with conviction and compassion.
"It's true," Rowan said, setting her wineglass down. "We were given a prophecy. A part of it has already come to pass. I don't know how you can help us, Mr. Martikov, but I know if you don't, we're all doomed."
Davian shared a look with Elvir and his other children.
"I'll tell you what," he said. "I will talk it over with my family, and let you know our decision tomorrow."
Navara, Irina, and Rowan agreed, and went to bed. But before Henry followed them, he said to Davian, "Don't feel like you have to help us. If you need to stay here to keep your family safe, I'd understand."
"Where is it you plan to go next?"
Davian asked. "Kresik, to seek out the abbot. We plan on having him train Milivaj to be the new priest in Vallaki. We also need a place where Irina can be safe." A glint of candlelight reflected in the old man's sharp eyes.
"Strahd's arm reaches to every corner of Barovia. Nowhere is safe."
On the floor of a bedroom shared by Elvir and Adrian, Henry took off his armor, settled into his bedroll, and reluctantly fell asleep. Henry knelt and looked into a large pool, but not close enough to see his own reflection. Instead, all he saw in the placid water was the half-moon reflected from the night sky above. Nearby sat an old gazebo on the verge of collapse. A stone statue of a mournful, bare-chested man stood inside the gazebo with arms outstretched, as though waiting to be embraced. Henry spoke in a deep voice.
"My lord, I am here again."
He paused, as if listening for a reply. Though only the silence of the night greeted his ears, he soon spoke again.
"But really, you would approve of my plan if you knew what it's like here. You simply can't understand the conditions under which I am laboring. Why do you keep going on about the boy? The boy is entirely unnecessary and entirely content where I left him. We need not concern him in such matters. I want him to be happy."
The man seemed to be carrying on half a conversation, but Henry himself could not hear the other half. The deep voice from Henry's throat continued.
"You have judged me very unfairly. I am the one charged with this task, so let me do it as I see fit." "I'm sorry, my lord. We simply don't see eye to eye on this matter. You will understand when it's all over. I'm sorry. I must go now."
With that, Henry stood, turned around, and started walking up the path. Hercomoid pounced on Navara's head, waking her up. She moaned. What time was it? It was hard to tell since the sun was always hidden behind thick clouds. Hercomoid told her telepathically that Rowan had caught a mouse for him to eat. "That's nice," the warlock said with bleary eyes. She wanted to go back to sleep, but saw that she was the only one still in bed. She had stayed up most of the night, translating the tome and talking with Gostomir. Neither Navara nor Gostomir brought up Vasili, instead focusing on the tome. Navara hoped she hadn't woken Irina or Rowan with her intermittent outbursts of surprise. Even Gostomir had let out an audible gasp when she read him the first passage in Strahd's book. "Hercomoid, where's Irina?" Navara asked the pseudo-dragon in her thoughts. He told her she was out in the vineyard. Navara dressed, grabbed the tome, and ran down the stairs to the first floor. When she saw a white cat sitting on a windowsill, she said, "Morning, Rowan. Can I pick you up? You just look so fluffy." The cat blinked at her with unamused eyes. It hissed when Navara scooped it up and draped it over her shoulder. "Rowan, you need to hear what I've got to say, too." On the first floor, Milivaj and his little siblings helped the Martikovs repair the damage done to the winery in the fighting. Navara ran past them, assuring them she would come back and help once she talked with her friends. Soon she found Irina walking with Henry in the middle of the vineyard. "There you two are. Irina, Irina, oh my goodness, you will not believe," Navara said. Her speech exaggerated and dramatic. Hercomoid batted at the cat behind Navara's back. There was a hiss. "Irina, you are Tatiana!" Irina and Henry gawked at the warlock. Navara held the tome of Strahd aloft. "I've been transcribing this thing, and I've made quite a few discoveries. Listen to this." She opened the book and read from her notes, which were scrawled on a separate paper. "It says here, 'I know I'm not mad. I'm seeing familiar faces reborn. Something in the mists is trapping the souls which would pass beyond, forcing some sort of reincarnation among my people. Do the dark powers mean to taunt me? Trap an entire people in an endless cycle of misery alongside my own? Perhaps they torment me with false hope that my Tatiana will be reborn too." He goes on in later passages to affirm that all people in Barovia are reincarnations, at least the ones who have souls, and he says that he found Tatiana in more than one lifetime. She flipped a few pages. Here he says, "This time Tatiana was so close, she was almost mine. A maiden named Marina. The burgomaster, the priest, and even her own parents conspired against me to murder her. I will spare no one in the village of Berez for this unconscionable outrage. I am the land, and I will swell the river until it swallows them up." Navara flipped to another page. "The dark powers have cursed me. Each time I am within reach of Tatiana's reincarnated soul, she is met with tragedy. I must keep her safe this time, no matter what it takes. Perhaps I may yet unravel the black threads of fate." Navara closed the book, proud of her translation. Then she noticed the picnic basket in Henry's hand. and he wasn't wearing his armor, and Irina was holding his other hand. They were on a date. But now Irina's face had turned sour. It looked like she was going to be sick. I'm so sorry. I've interrupted something, Navara said, awkwardly backing away. I've probably ruined your day. It's not your fault, Irina said. Only Strahd has ruined anything. You're right. We do need to know what he knows. But I don't care what he thinks about me. Maybe I do have the soul of Tatiana, but I'm not her. I'm me. Henry put his arm around Irina's shoulder. An expression of understanding creased his handsome face. Come on, he said. We were going back to the winery anyway. Then looking past Navara, he said, Hello, Rowan. Nice of you to join us. Navara turned around to see Rowan coming toward them in elven form. The druid looked at the white cat slung across Navara's shoulder. Navara smiled sheepishly as she petted the cat. It flicked its tail and growled. I think it's time I start making some holy water, Henry said. Navara dropped the cat, obviously a pet of the Martikovs, and followed the others as they made their way out of the vineyard. Navara wasn't sure how Henry did it, since he was not a cleric or a priest. Maybe it was because he was an Aasimar sent by God. But for the rest of the afternoon, Henry sanctified 6 vials of water, making them holy. Gostamir had told Navara they would need at least 2 vials to consecrate the wood fane. That's what he called the standing stones by the windmill. He also told Navara he thought the other fanes were called the bog fane and the hill fane, though he still couldn't remember where they were. By the end of the day, after they had helped fix some of the damage around the winery, Davian invited them to stay for a feast of borscht, fried potatoes, and smoked venison. After the children had their fill and went off to bed, everyone sat at the dining room table, and Davian got down to business.
We will help you, he said, but first I need your help. I've told you that druids are sending blights to destroy the land. That's true, but it's Strahd's curse that makes it near impossible to grow grapes in Barovia. The soil is rancid, and not enough sunlight comes through the clouds. This vineyard, however, was protected. Long before the curse, a wizard, whose name is lost to history, crafted 3 magical gems and planted them in the ground. The vineyard thrived even after the curse, but our last gem was stolen by the mountain folk 5 days ago. I don't know what they mean to do with it, but they've been very active lately, coming to and fro from Yester Hill.
Did these mountain folk steal all the gems? Irina asked.
No, Davian said. My father told me the first gem was taken by the rock that lives on Mount Gakis. I've never seen the beast, but those giant birds are said to live for thousands of years. I hear it still hunts in the mountains. I don't doubt for a moment that it's still there. The second gem was stolen by an evil crone who did violence to more than just our vineyard. But we only need 1 gem for the winery to function again, and our spies think the mountain folk took the 3rd gem to Yester Hill, 10 miles south of here.
Navara's interest was piqued. She leaned onto the table. Mr. Martikov, tell me, who is this crone? Could she be a hag? Davian sat back in his seat, appearing surprised by the guess.
Why, yes, she is a hag.
I knew it! Don't get too excited, Navara, Henry said. We still need to go to Krezek. Where is she? Navara asked, an eagerness in her tone.
Her name is Baba Lysaga, Adrian said.
Navara hadn't noticed him sitting across the room, with a frown beneath his thick black beard. He propped his single elbow on the table and tightened his hand into a fist.
I fear to tell you where she lives. Going there will only bring you pain.
If she is a hag, then she must be connected to Mother Night.
Navara explained her first purpose in coming to Barovia. But like Henry and Rowan, she had been swept up in helping Irina and the people of the valley. She had only been in this cursed land for a short time, but felt it was her duty to protect its people, just as much as freeing Gostamir from the Fey Wild.
Please, Navara urged, at least tell us where I can find this Babali Saga. Berez, said Stefania, with eyes like hard coal. She lives among the ruins in the swamp. If you find her, don't show that bitch any mercy. She murdered Adrian's wife and children.
The conversation went cold, and Navara could not finish the food on her plate. After the others ate their last bits of supper and cleared the table, Davian got out his Ilian pipes and began to play. Mellow notes filled the room, and not a single person moved. It wasn't some arcane magic that held them spellbound, but a musical magic that only a listener can understand. The song was sad, with notes of hope and longing. It was easy to see where Elvir got his talent and his style. Drinking in the music, Navara could almost smell the pines in the forest, hear the babbling of the Ivlis River, feel the grass under her feet. The pipes carried her across the valley, and she knew that Davian must truly love Barovia. One by one, they went to bed. Navara and Davian were the last in the dining room when the final notes of the pipes died away, and the only sound that remained was the crackling of embers in the hearth.
Mr. Martikov, Navara said, remembering something else she had been meaning to ask.
The old man stashed the pipes in a cabinet.
Please call me Davian.
Davian, why do you think other travellers failed to break Barovia's curse?
Davian sighed.
I don't know for certain, but to end the curse is to end the vampire who brought it. You will need to know your enemy and beat him at his own game to heal the valley. That's something no one has been able to do. But take heart. I've never heard of the Vistani leader telling a fortune quite like yours. And if the Morning Lord is on your side, who knows? Miracles can happen.
Thanks, Davian. You're an inspiration.
Davian looked at Navara, with etched wrinkles deep in his weathered skin.
I think it's you who's brought hope to these tired bones of mine. I trust that you and your friends are going to do your best to watch Irina. But I pray for your sakes that she's not this Tatiana. I fear to think what Strahd has in store for her. Please take care of yourself, too. Strahd likes collecting interesting people, whether they have Tatiana's soul or not. He took my mother when I was very young. You remind me of her in some ways, from what I can remember.
What was her name?
Anastasia Karlova.
Navara swallowed. The vampire with the red dress. Navara pictured her, climbing out of the black carriage, taking Strahd's hand, the day they had buried Irina's father.
Yes, said Davian, seeing the look on her face. She's been one of his consorts for the past 60 years.
Did he charm her, like he's done to Irina?
Davian nodded.
The vampire is cruel, and his magic is strong. But don't worry yourself about it now. Get some rest. You and your friends have a long day tomorrow if you want to reach Kresik.
One last question,
Navara said, thinking about Gostamir.
Have you heard of the Fanes?